Back in 1947, Henri Matisse gave the world one of his most vibrant masterpieces, a book called Jazz. But here's the thing. What if that incredible explosion of color is slowly and silently fading away? Today, we are diving headfirst into an art detective story, the mission to save Matisse's jazz. All right, let's just take a second to soak this in. Just look at the energy here. This is Horse, Rider, and Clown, one of 20 illustrations from the book. Late in his career, Matisse came up with this incredible new way of working. He literally called it painting with scissors. He used these simple paper cutouts to create these unbelievably dynamic scenes, all full of his memories of the circus, old folktales, and his travels. But what's so wild is Matisse's own reaction to it. Even though we see it as this iconic masterpiece today, when he first saw the final printed book, he actually told a friend that it was, and I quote, absolutely a failure. Yeah, he just felt the printing process couldn't quite capture the life and soul of his original paper cutouts. But as it turns out, an artist's opinion wasn't the biggest threat to this work. Nope, the real danger is way more sneaky. Time and its constant companion, light, have been silently at work. So that leads us to the crucial question. Are these brilliant colors, the very heart of jazz, actually disappearing right before our very eyes? And that brings us to the core of our investigation, this masterpiece's hidden risk. See, to protect a piece of art like jazz, you've got to know exactly what it's made of. Matisse himself knew that some of the paints he used could fade, especially certain pinks and violets. But which ones specifically, and just how fragile are they really? So here's the case file for our little art detective story. We have a priceless work of art with hundreds of copies all over the world, and its single, most important feature, its color, is at risk. And the enemy? It's light. Every single time a copy of Jazz is put on display, it could be suffering irreversible damage. And who are the detectives on this case? Well, they're not your typical gumshoes, that's for sure. This is a job for a super specialized team. Scientists and conservators from the Museum of Modern Art in New York and a bunch of research institutions in Paris, all teaming up to crack the chemical code of Matisse's colors. Welcome to the scientific crime scene. Now, you can't exactly dust for fingerprints on a priceless work of art. The #1 rule of this kind of investigation is do no harm. So the team had to bring in a whole arsenal of non-invasive, high-tech gadgets to analyze the artwork without leaving a single tiny trace. And this breaks down their method perfectly. It's what they call a multi-analytical approach, and it happens in 3 key steps. First up, non-invasive scans. They use portable tools to get a quick look at the basic chemical elements in the paint. Then they use different kinds of light to find the unique spectral fingerprints of the molecules. And finally, just to be 100% sure, they take these microscopic, basically invisible samples from a study copy to confirm everything back in the lab. So, the team gathers all this data. We're talking hundreds of readings and charts. But that just creates a new problem. It's kind of like a detective having thousands of clues just dumped on their desk. The next crucial step is to find the pattern in all that noise. And that brings us to the next phase, cracking the color code. Now, this is how they did it, and it's pretty brilliant. They used a technique called Principal Component Analysis, or PCA. The easiest way to think about these charts is like a chemical map. The plot on the right, for example, groups all the yellows that have a similar chemical signature. This is how they could see that, hey, not all the yellows in jazz are the same. Some are made one way, some are made another. And all this meticulous detective work, well, it paid off. Big time. For the very first time, the team was able to completely reconstruct Matisse's chemical palette for jazz. So how many different paints do you think they found? 10? 20? Not even close. They identified a staggering 39. 39 different paint formulas were used to create the 20 images in jazz. This thing was way more complex than anybody had ever imagined. And here's a peek at some of the key culprits they found. The team rated each pigment's sensitivity to light on a scale. That's the BWEQ number you see there. And here, lower numbers are bad news. Take a look at that magenta and the pink. They score a 2.5 and a 2, which means they're really sensitive to fading. But then, look down at the yellow. It scores over 3, making it way more stable. The big takeaway here is that not all colors are created equal. And this brings us to what is maybe the most critical part of the entire investigation. Finally identifying the fugitive colors. These are the ones that are truly at risk of just disappearing. So what exactly is a fugitive color?
Well, it's a term conservators use for pigments that just aren't permanent. They're super sensitive to light, and that light can cause them to fade, change their color, or in the worst case scenario, disappear completely. They are, quite literally, running away from the light.
So the investigation finally pinpointed exactly which colors in jazz are the most fugitive. And honestly, the list is pretty concerning because it includes the very colors that give this work its soul. That vibrant magenta, the deep blues, the pinks, and even specific shades of green and orange. These colors are the heart of the artwork, and they're the ones that need the most protection. And this picture shows you exactly what we're talking about. The data confirms what conservators have feared for a long time. This brilliant magenta and this vivid blue are two of the most vulnerable colors in the entire series. They are extremely sensitive to light. But now, compare that with this yellow. Thanks to a really stable pigment in its formula, this color is so much more robust. It can handle a lot more light before it even thinks about fading. Seeing them side by side like this really drives home just how different the risks are from one color to the next. So, with all the clues gathered and the culprits identified, what's the final chapter in our detective story? Well, it's all about making sure we preserve this vibrant legacy for the future. You see, the result of all this work isn't just a science paper. It's a chemical map of jazz. And because there are hundreds of copies of this masterpiece in collections all over the globe, this map is now an absolutely essential tool for any conservator who's taking care of one. So here's the bottom line. Knowing which specific colors are fugitive changes everything. It means museums can now make really precise, informed decisions. They can adjust the lighting, limit how long a piece is on exhibition, and design storage solutions that specifically protect the most fragile parts of the artwork. All of this ensures that generations to come can see jazz the way Matisse wanted them to. This whole mission to save Matisse's jazz is such a cool example of how science can reveal the hidden life of art. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? As our technology gets more and more powerful, what other invisible stories, what other secret vulnerabilities are just waiting to be uncovered in the world's greatest masterpieces?